Hi everyone, Stepan here. I played my first Sicilian. After a long time playing only the Caro-Kann, I finally got the courage to play the Sicilian. Now, I have played it twice before, about 4 or 5 years ago, but against people rated 1000 or 1200, 1300, so not in serious games against stronger opponents. And yesterday, I played it against a stronger opponent for the first time. So, not a Caro-Kann. Now, my opponent plays for Ericsson Nikola Tesla, a strong team. He is not young, he is about 60, but his results this season have been amazing, and he is pretty strong. So, let me tell you about my prep. My opponent always plays e4, and against c5, there is only one game in which he played knight f3. So he usually plays the close Sicilian. So my first Sicilian was not as brave as it seems because I was almost certain I was going to be facing the closed lines. Now, one thing I would like to say is that I have not engine checked this game. I have analyzed it for about 3 hours on my own. And yesterday, during a lesson with one of my students, we had a look at the game as well. So I did some analysis, but not engine checked. And we're going to do this at the end of the video. And from now on, this is how I'm going to do this. I'm not going to engine check my games. I'll only show you my analysis. That way we can see the discrepancy between my skill during the game, during analysis, and then finally when we engine check. This was a tough game. We ended up winning the match. It's played on 6 boards. It's a team competition. But okay, so my opponent plays knight c3, and my prep was trying to get into a line that he has played 4 times before, and his chess.com account is also public, so there were also 4 games, 4 online games, so 8 games total, and in 7 games he played a mistake on move 10, and in one of the games he played the correct move, and on move 10, I hope you can see this here, castles is the correct move. So bishop g2, bishop g7, this is just one of the main lines against the knight c6 close Sicilian, d6, bishop e3, and I chose to play rook b8. I like this move because you expand with b5, b4 straight away. Queen d2, b5, this is still mainline theory. Knight g2, white can also play f4, and I was prepared for that, but knight g2 is more common. Where's my coffee? By the way, I'm back home. No more tractor guy, and finally back to good coffee. And one more thing, my car died. So Lucia and I were trying to get back home from the island. And first of all, we come from the island to Split, and the window on the driver's door falls into the door. And I know nothing about cars, so I go to a mechanic. He puts a piece of wood to fix the window, pulls it out, puts a piece of wood inside, and then, okay, I can go to the highway. Now, my car is a 25-year-old Skoda, very old, keeps overheating. When I burned my hand, I burned it on that car, so it's an old car. And then, okay, it's the afternoon, we head to Zagreb, and the car starts overheating and dies. So the current prognosis, the current diagnosis is that the engine is dead, that the head of the engine, now I don't even know the Croatian terms, so if you don't understand what I'm talking about, I'm sorry. The head of the engine split, whatever that means, and anyway, the car is still at the gas station near Split. So yeah, I had a bit of trouble coming to this league game. I had no idea if I was actually going to be playing. Back to the game. b4, knight d1, all mainline stuff, and now black has a couple of options, but I played knight d4. And in one of the games, my opponent played the move knight f4, and this is a big mistake, because it allows bishop g4. And in this position, I'm threatening knight f3, so my opponent against that guy in that game took on d4. That guy took with the bishop, which is a mistake. He should have taken with the c pawn. And now you've got a bind on the c2 pawn. White's never playing c3. And black should have a significant advantage. For example, h3, bishop c8, knight e2, e5. If f4 is ever played, there's bishop h6. And otherwise, I can just pile up on the pawn. It's not really clear where this knight is going. Probably f4, bishop h6, knight f2. But that all seems kind of loose. A better move and a theoretical move is castles, and that's what my opponent played in this game. So this is the position Mr. Heged had against Damian Horvat, a friend of mine, and they had it in their game a couple of years ago. Damian played queen b6, and I decided to copy him because it seems like an interesting move. Now queen b6 reinforces the b-pawn, frees up the rook, develops the queen, puts pressure on this diagonal, and indirectly plays against f3 and f4, and it also gives you the idea to go queen a6 and b3, because the rook is hanging, the a pawn is pinned. If the c2 pawn ever moves, then queen a6, b3 basically wins the a pawn or forces a3. So the idea is twofold. Another idea could be to play queen b5, bishop a6 if the c pawn ever moves, targeting d3. So queen b6 is a useful move. And against Damian, Mr. Heged played f3, g4, knight g3, and Damian could have gotten an almost winning position immediately after g4. So in this position he played e6, and after g4 he played knight e7, but he could have played h5, and this is a tremendous advantage. In any case, after queen b6, Mr. Heged played f4 against me, and I was prepared for this. I played knight f6, the threat, knight g4, winning the bishop pair with a big advantage. Of course, if bishop or knight takes on d4, then I once again take with the pawn and get this bind on the c3 pawn. So h3 seems forced. Castles, this was all my prep. g4, I was also expecting this, and I had prepared knight e2, which is the best move. I know the engine evaluation here because this was still my prep. So queen e2 and bishop b7, that's the end of my prep. The engine, I think, says minus 0.2. There's a feather flying about. And I thought, okay, if he plays f4, which he had never played before on move 11, this is good enough, I'll figure it out. And at this point I didn't know what to do. He played f5, which was surprising. And I had a couple of options. The first option was a5, and that seems interesting. fg6 doesn't really do much. a5, of course, I want to go a4, a3, and so on, create this attack. And my opponent probably wants to play queen d2, exchange the bishops to get rid of this pressure. But then I started thinking, okay, why not play for b3? Queen a6 creates an immediate threat. I want to take on e4 because the d pawn is pinned and the queen is hanging. So I ended up playing queen a6. Of course, if my opponent makes a random move, I don't know, king h1, then I just take. And this should be, I mean, it's just a clean pawn up. I'm not saying I'm winning, but you know, it's a significant advantage. So I was expecting queen d2, which he did play. And now I'm not sure about b3. As long as my knight is still on f6 and I cannot get it to e5 in one move, then d3 isn't hanging. Of course, if b3 now, then cb, and it takes too long to get my knight to e5 to take the d pawn, and also the bishop is still on e3. So my idea was to maybe play b3 once the bishops get exchanged. So queen d2, I played knight d7, I want to play b3, c takes, knight e5, take the pawn. Bishop h6. At this point, I reversed the move order. I don't know why I didn't play b3 immediately. I should have played b3 immediately. Now, I don't know what the engine is going to say, but I think this works. So b3, of course, ab3 loses the rook. So cb3 seems forced, or I win the pawn. If a3, then I take, queen takes, and knight e5, and you lose the d pawn. Or sorry, queen takes, I take the bishop. You'd have to throw in bishop g7 first. So on b3, let's say cb3. If bishop h6, then queen h6 and queen d3. And on b3, if bishop g7, king g7, cb3, knight e5. And this seems good. E5, I'm not sure about e5. E5, I'm not sure. We will engine check this. This is probably the only way to save the material, but I can probably take. And I don't think the spin is a big deal. this should be fine for me. I mean, there's still pressure here. So b3 was definitely a candidate, but I had decided to play knight e5 first. And now after bishop g7, king g7, my opponent played knight e3, and now b3, of course, doesn't work because the rook is defended. A b3 is a move. So I actually made a mistake. I knew the correct plan, and that's the main reason I played queen a6, but I was one move too late. In any case, knight e3 played, and now I have to switch plans. I played bishop c6 because I want to move my a pawn, and if I'm going to move my a pawn, I need my queen somewhere sensible, and the sensible square was queen b7. So I wanted to play bishop c6, queen b7, a5, a4, and so on. And it's at this point that I began defending. And this is move 19. I was defending for about 40 moves, and this is one of the most stressful games I've ever played. Now, I have zero experience in the Sicilian as black, as you know. Okay, not zero, I've played some training games in the Sicilian, but no actual tournament experience. So I have this position as white all the time. Black is attacking on the queen side, you're moving the king side pawns, and I enjoy playing white. So I would have been more comfortable with my opponent's position. In any case, my opponent played b3, now it's safe, the bishop's gone. Queen b7, g5. And instead of queen b7, I could have played f6 immediately. I played it after g5. The point is, I have to play f6 at some point. If I don't, let's say queen b7, g5, and this is just to show you a random move. a5, there's f6, and I'm losing. Because once my king moves away, wherever it moves, maybe knight f5, queen h6, and mate. Seems awful. So queen b7, g5, now I played f6. I need to prevent the f-pawn from moving. And I figured, okay, my position seems fine. My opponent's the one attacking. I don't have anything until my pawn reaches a4, and then I can break through on the queen side, but that's not as scary. And everything gets traded off. Takes on f6. And here I took with the f-pawn, with the e-pawn instantly. When I was analyzing the game, before I had a lesson with my student, I spent maybe half an hour in this position, and I knew what happened next. So it's easy to find alternative moves and different candidate moves when you've experienced the stressful defense I have. So if I had this position now, I definitely would take with the rook. Why? Because it reduces some of the pressure that's about to happen. Of course, if the rook takes, then I still take with the e-pawn, but a pair of rooks has been traded off. It's easier to defend the f-pawn. But in the game, I took with the e-pawn, and my opponent played rook f4 instantly. And now there are a couple of threats. Here I started being very scared. So the first point is my bishop needs to keep defending d5. Otherwise, knight d5 and f6 hangs. My opponent's going to double up the rooks. And most importantly, my king is cut off from going to the queen side because the f-pawn hangs. And if you can imagine a queen coming to g3, there would be knight f5, check, forcing my king back. And if there's a queen on e7, for example, that wins the queen. There's another threat. Rook h4 followed by knight f5 and queen h6. Seems dreadful for me. So I didn't know which threat I should worry about first. The main candidate is of course rook f7, and it becomes easier to defend the f-pawn. However, I played rook h8 because I wanted to prevent rook h4. My opponent played rook af1. I played rook bf8. And when my opponent played queen f2, I thought I could be close to losing. And I actually spent half an hour here. Why? Well, if I make a random move like queen e7, then queen g3, and knight f5 threatens to win my queen. If I then move my queen to f7, then knight f5 check, king g8 followed by knight d6 wins the base pawn in my position, and I'm losing. So I didn't know what to do. I cannot play bishop d7. If I play bishop d7 defending against knight f5, then my opponent just takes. So the pawn needs to be defended. Even if I could play bishop d7, that cuts off my queen and allows knight d5. So after a long think, I played queen f7. And even though my queen is the first defender of the f-pawn, that seemed safer than playing queen e7. My opponent played queen g3, and now I played queen e6. This was my plan. I'm gonna play queen here and queen here, so that the queen is out of the way of the rook. Knight f5 does not win material, the d-pawn is defended, that's why queen e6, and I'm holding. Now, if I had to evaluate this position, after having spent almost 5 hours analyzing it, I'm gonna say it's about equal. I couldn't find a win for white. We're gonna use the engine at the end of the video and see, but I couldn't find a win for white. During the game, it felt like I was about to lose in a single move. And obviously I could have lost had I blundered knight f5 or something. So my opponent played h4, and the idea is twofold. Firstly h5, secondly bishop h3, a tempo on the queen. Now I cannot prevent bishop h3. I was looking at bishop d7, but that just fails to knight d5. If knight d5, the only way to save the pawn would be to play knight g4, but now I just lose the knight to bishop h3 because it's pinned to the queen. So after h4, I cannot prevent bishop h3. I need to get away from this check and this pin, so I played king h7. You're welcome to suggest an alternative, but there are so many tactical tricks here that I just wanted to get away from one of them. So, of course, bishop h3 was played. If h5, I don't think that's as scary. I can probably take, and on rook h4, I may be able to get away with bishop e8 or queen e8. At least that's what I was thinking at the time, but it would have been scary. He played bishop h3. I played queen e7, no more tricks. If the king was on g7 now, I'd lose my queen, but I played king h7. My opponent played queen f2, attacking the f-pawn again. I played king g7, and I think here is where my opponent made a mistake, bishop f5. Of course, I'm not going to take the bishop, because I lose my queen, but I don't have to take the bishop. The threat could be, let's say I make a random move. I don't know, a6. Bishop takes g6. If I take with the knight, then knight f5 wins my queen. If I take with the king, this is scary. But I don't think it's game over. I don't think this is a winning threat. I don't know, queen g3, king f7, knight f5. Maybe I can play queen e6. It seems okay. Seems okay. I'm running away. I'm just up a piece and threatening rook g8. In fact, I probably could have played rook g8 here. Seems so. So on bishop f5, I wasn't even sure that this works, but I still defended. I played rook h6. Just that way I don't have to calculate anything. My opponent, now if h5, I think I can just take. And if bishop g4, I have rook g5. And this seems fine. And if bishop takes g6, I also have rook g5. So my opponent played bishop g4. And I don't know if there are any threats here. I couldn't see them. So I just started doing something active. a5. Now my problem in this position is that my bishop is stuck defending the d5 square. So technically I'm down a piece because this knight is very active. This bishop is doing nothing. Queen g3. Again, setting up tricks of knight f5, and now I finally get out of the way, king h8. Now I was happy. Now I thought, okay, I'm not going to lose this game. Now everything seems fine. Of course, I don't want to take that bishop because my knight is the only good piece for the moment. And now we shuffled a bit. My opponent played rook f2. I defended this rook. This rook was undefended and the f-pawn was pinned. So I saved my rook. My opponent played king e2. And now, yeah, d5 and f5. And if these work, then that's great. Tactically, they should work now because the king is lined up with the queen. And there may be tricks. So, for example, if d5, if my opponent takes with the knight, then I take and win. Okay, I'm just up a piece. And if d5, ed5, then I don't know what to do. I have no idea. It's probably just losing. If I had a rook on e8, I could take, and then maybe I win my piece back. And if f5, then ef5, and I don't see anything good, because I take on g4, And my opponent can throw in this, probably. Seemed bad. I couldn't see anything good here. So I just played bishop b7, reinforcing d5. Now bishop b7 may be a bad move, but on the other hand, I couldn't see what my opponent was about to do. I saw no way to make progress if you don't play h5. King d2, bishop c6, I'm just waiting. Now the king is no longer on the e-file. Bishop e2, rook h6, rook h2, queen e6, preventing bishop g4, sort of, and knight g4. When my opponent played knight g4, we were both at about 10 minutes. So this is, of course, a classical game, 90 plus 30. And when I saw knight g4, I was so happy. And I thought, okay, now I'm playing for a win. And that's true, because knight g4 is so bad, simply because I get to trade off my opponent's main defender. My bishop is coming into the game. My queen has all of these dark squares, and my queenside attack is about to happen. And everything's defended. There are no threats. If my opponent, for example, takes with... I don't know. If queen takes, for example, then queen takes, rook takes, and here. And then everything gets traded off, and that's fine. So my opponent took with the bishop. I played queen e5 instantly. I was really happy. If nothing's done, then I'll play this and win. So for example, king c1, g5. And maybe it's not winning. Maybe my opponent saves the game with rook f3, but I wasn't really sure. So there's, of course, there's this. So it's hard for me to double up my rooks. So if rook h3, rook h7, there's bishop f5. My opponent's going to win the pawn back, but it's still more pleasant for black. On queen e5, my opponent played queen f2. And I wanted to draw. Why? Because I had been defending for 20-30 moves, and I wanted to end this. I was below 10 minutes. I was stressed. It's a team competition. I didn't even think about winning. I was walking home after the game, relatively happy, when I found a winning idea. And we're going to check this with the engine, but I couldn't refute it. So I played queen c3 and went for a draw. Not that the game was drawn after that, but queen c3 leads to an equal position. Had I played a4, maybe I would have won the game. So I don't know what white does. First of all, the pawn cannot be taken, because if the pawn is taken, then queen c3, king somewhere, and bishop a4. I'm threatening queen d4 and queen b2. So on a4, let's say a random move, that I was just looking at rook f3, doesn't matter. Then ab3, queen c3, king somewhere, king e2 is the only move that doesn't make sense. So let's say king, I don't know, king e3. And now I play d5. And this is very scary. Of course, if my opponent goes to the back rank, then I just go to k7, and that's the end of the game. Maybe I've missed something. We're gonna engine check this, but a4, opening up the a file in combination with d5 is so scary. If e d5, then rook e7 check, and that's it. I don't see a way to prevent mate. King here, I mate you. If bishop here, I win the bishop. You don't have time for rook f6 because I take the bishop with check. Seems like game over. So a4, opening up the a file, d5 and queen c3 would have been a winning attempt. And I am pretty sure black is winning there. Instead, I played queen c3. My opponent played king d1. I repeated. Queen c3, king e3, queen d4, king e2, and I took the queen. And this, of course, should be equal. I don't think either side has anything. I played king g7, h5, g5, bishop f5, and here I think I made a mistake. I played bishop d7. I wanted to lift the blockade. Black should be slightly better, maybe because this is a passed pawn and this is a weak pawn, but I don't think it's enough to win. Again, we're gonna look at the engine at the end. So maybe I should have played rook a7. I played bishop d7 during the game, and I don't know what, excuse me, what white is supposed to do. probably something like this, and doubling up the rooks and attacking the f-pawn. So let's say a4, rook here, takes here, king d2. I don't know. Maybe chase the rook away, but then there's this. Seems like both sides have something to play for. I wouldn't say black is the one playing for a win. I would say it's equal. And I probably have to go back and defend because rook f2 is coming. So instead I played bishop d7. My opponent played king e3, bishop f5, rook f5, king f8. I want to get to my d-pawn. d4, a good move, rook c7, preventing my opponent from winning a pawn, dc, rook c. And if this is taken, I think black is winning. My opponent is too good to do that. Of course, if rook c5, dc5, king d3, I play king e7, and this is not good for white. I'm just gonna queen. Their king has no time to go here. So if, for example, king c4, then king e6. King takes c5, king e5. And that's it. I think this is the end of the game. King b5, g4, and I'm just queening. My opponent's gonna have to give up the rook, and these pawns are, of course, way too slow. So instead, my opponent played king d4, threatening to win a pawn. I played rook e5. Rook takes, pawn takes, king d5, king e7, and I figured, okay, this is a draw. And I couldn't see a way for white to make progress unless c3 or c4 is played. And if it is played, I can throw in g4. So I played nothing, I just waited. And then finally my opponent played c3. At this point I had 2 minutes or 3 minutes. So did my opponent. And I actually think I managed to calculate this well. If I take immediately, then my opponent takes, and on rook takes, there's rook c2. But I can get that same position with my rook c7, sorry. I can get the same position with my pawn on g4 and not on g5. So I throw in g4. And now, of course, my opponent has to play rook g3. If the rook moves away, then I just take the c-pawn and queen. That much is simple. So rook g3. Now I've gained the tempo because the rook moved for no reason. Now when I take on c3, rook c3, rook takes h5. My opponent plays rook c7. I can now go king f8, covering the g7 square, and I'm threatening to queen. Okay, king e6. I have to play rook h6, and if my opponent isn't careful now, they could be losing. I could also lose, of course. And I think my opponent played the losing move here. Now, during the game, I was not thinking about winning. I thought this was a draw because my king is too bad, and if I ever lose my f-pawn, there's going to be a mate threat and I'll have to repeat. However, my opponent played king f5, and now I went g3. And there are two important features of this position. One of them is if I get my king to f7 and my rook reaches either g5 or f4, that's checkmate. Okay, I saw rook f4 checkmate. I saw rook g5 checkmate, but I didn't see rook f4. No, the other way around. I saw rook f4 checkmate, but I didn't see rook g5 checkmate. The other thing is, if the rook doesn't go back now, my opponent's gonna lose because I'm gonna queen. So my opponent has to play rook c3. And during the game, I thought, okay, if I move my rook, my opponent takes on f6 and threatens mate. If I move my pawn, my opponent plays rook g3 and wins the pawn. So I played king f7. And we repeated and agreed to a draw. So rook c7, king f8, rook c3, king f7, and so on. The game ended like this. However, there's a win in this position. Instead of king f7, and this I saw when I was walking home. So no board, in my head, I'm thinking about this endgame, and I find a win. And some woman on the street thought I was crazy because I started shouting, this is a winning position. I don't need an engine to figure this out. Instead of king f7, I go g2. Now, white's next move is forced. White has to play rook g3 or else I'm queening. And now I go rook h3. And the only sensible move, I mean, if you take the rook, I make a queen and you lose. The only sensible move is rook takes pawn. Correct? Yes. Now I play king f7. And king f7 means that your king is going to be completely cut off when I play rook f3, rook f4. What's even worse, if you prevent rook f3, I mate you. So let's say you play rook f2. I go rook g3, and this is unstoppable mate. I didn't see rook g5 mate. So my opponent cannot prevent rook f3. My opponent has to check my king away to avoid checkmate. And if they stay on the g file, let's say here, well, okay, this is mate or you lose the rook. So let's say here, random move, then I check you away, I win this pawn, and I win the game, 2 connected passed pawns. So my opponent has to play either rook d2 or rook c2 to check my king away. And now I just go rook f3, the king moves away, rook f4, the king moves away, take the pawn, 2 connected passed pawns, the game is over. I had a couple of minutes on the clock, I couldn't see this. I'm sure I would have won this position. This is too easy, 2 connected passed pawns, but yeah. Unfortunately, I drew. Not that I was unhappy, I thought I was going to lose for about 5 hours. So, okay, now let's engine check the game. So all of this was my analysis. Maybe it was incorrect. So let's start here, here. Yeah, as I said, minus 0.2. I know this was still my prep. The first move I didn't know was pawn to f5. Okay, I played queen a6. d5, I didn't consider d5. a5, a5 seems okay. Queen a6 equal. Queen d2, okay, makes sense. Queen back to b6, rook c8. I played knight d7, which is okay, it's still equal. Bishop h6, yes, I should have played b3. I should have played b3. Let's just check what happens on d4. So takes, 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 takes. Knight e5 is correct. What happens on d4? I take, the queen takes, f6, okay, equal. And the engine doesn't say d4. The engine wants to play knight e3, giving the pawn. Why? Ah, okay, because they get in f6. Okay. Instead, I played knight e5. Okay, slight advantage to white. Takes, takes, knight e3. Bishop c6 is my first mistake, going from 0 to 0.5. I should have gone f6 immediately, but I couldn't see a reason to play f6 before g5 is played. Okay, b3, not good. Queen b7, not good. g5, f6 is forced, that much I know. Ooh, knight g4. Why knight g4? Knight g4, I would have taken that. And I wouldn't... Ah! Because now there are 2 g-pawns. If gf, ef, then there's g5 again. Ooh. Okay, so let's say I do take. This seems very scary. I never would have played this. There's no way. I would think I'm much worse here. Okay, so f6. fg. Here. And now let's see, I took with the pawn. I'm sure taking with the rook is better. Yes. Let's turn on multiple lines. You always ask me for that. Here. Okay, ef is 0.4. Can you guys see this? Yes. Okay, so I took with the pawn. Rook f4. Rook h8 best move. No, now it's rook f7. Okay. Okay. Forced. Queen e7 is playable? I can ignore it? This must be a joke. How is a5 playable? Okay, so I just give up a pawn and trade everything off. Okay, I did not consider that. What do I do on queen e7, queen g3? Oh, I still go queen e6. Can I still go queen e6? No? Wait, but that's the position I had in the game, so I was... So wait, I played queen f7, queen g3, queen e6. Oof, knight f5... Significant advantage, not that h4 is bad. So I would have played king g8. d4. Oof. Yeah, this is just crushing. So instead of that, my opponent played h4, which is fine. I played king h7, +1. Bishop h3, queen e7. Queen f2, king g7 is forced. Bishop f5. Okay, yeah, I knew bishop f5 was a mistake. I played rook h6, which is good. Almost equal. Bishop g4, f5. f5, I didn't consider f5. So f5, what if pawn takes? Oh, I take on h4. Wait, isn't there f6? What? Oh, this is mate. I didn't see that. Ah, this is nice. That's why you play f5. Okay, I didn't. This is so nice. This checkmate idea. I played a5. A mistake. Queen g3. King h8, best move. Good. Rook f2. Here, 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 here. f5 worked again. Okay, let's see. f5 takes. Queen takes. Queen takes. Queen takes. Pawn takes. Pawn takes. Rook takes. Yeah, this seems equal. I like bishop d7. Here, here. Wow. Okay. Oh, this is a weird way to go for a draw. I cannot take the pawn when it comes to g2, to g7. Okay. So I played bishop b7 doing nothing. Then f5 worked again. Then bishop c6 doing nothing. Then I played rook h6 +1. Come on, I thought I was okay here. h5. Can I just take that? No? Oh, yeah, stupid. Knight f5. Okay, queen f8 takes. Knight takes. Yeah, this is... I had completely underestimated h5 here. Rook h2 was a mistake. Queen e6. And yeah, knight g4 solves all my problems. So let's see. Knight takes. Bishop takes. Black is better. Queen e5. Queen f2. a4 was good. No! It's very hard to switch to thinking about winning the game. So let's see. I wanted to go a4, queen c3 and d5. So a4. Let's see what the engine plays. The engine takes. Okay, let's play bishop d1. That seems sensible. I would have taken takes, queen c3, king somewhere, and d5. Okay, it's not winning. It's not winning, but it's better for me. Bishop d1 is a good move because it allows king e2. Bishop d1 is very good. Now let's see, instead of bishop d1, let's make this random move. So takes, takes, queen c3, king... Wait, king d1? Don't I have rook a7? What? Wait a minute. Rook f6. Here. 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 Oh yeah. Okay. I have to trade queens. Maybe I would have lost this position. I thought rook a7 was just great. But I don't have to play rook a7. Instead of that, I play f5 and I'm winning. So this, I take the rook. Bishop takes, I win a piece. And if my opponent ignores me, then I take, and still, this is an unstoppable threat. Here, here, yeah. Okay, instead I played queen c3. I'm still better? Oh no! I played queen d4 here, which is equal. f5. Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. So f5, if it's taken, then rook e7, I guess, is... Yeah, this is... seems over. Yeah. And if my opponent does nothing, let's say random move. Okay, let's find a better random move. I don't know, here. Then still rook e7. Wow. Okay, I had a few minutes on the clock. I did not see this. Queen d4. Here, here. Draw. Okay, I'm expecting everything up to king f5 to be equal. Almost equal, 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 equal. Wow. Wait, king f7 is better for black. Why? Okay, what do I do? Okay, 2 passed pawns. Yeah, now it changes its mind. Okay, so it's not clear. I played king e7. Equal, equal. Wait, what? So yeah, still the same thing. Rook h8 and... Okay, c3. g4 is best, good. It's still a draw. Draw. Takes, takes. King f8 is good. King e6 is good. Rook h6 seems forced. a3. a3? Wait. a3, can I not go rook g6? King f5. No, yeah, I'm not in time. I'm not in time. Okay, but my opponent played king f5. I knew it. I knew it. Okay, let's see. g3, rook c3, rook rook h3, rook g2, king f7. That's my winning idea. Wait, king f7 is winning too? I thought only g2 was winning. So let's check. Here, 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 king f7 is winning. Yeah, it's winning. It's winning. Okay, let's say rook d2. Yeah, yeah. Easily winning. Come on. Wait, but I played king f7, which is also winning. So let's see. So the threat is, let's say a random move now. Just, yeah, this is great. Now I queen. So my opponent cannot make a random move. So let's say my opponent checks my king away. This is how the game actually ended. Yeah, I'm still winning with the same idea. I eventually have to play g2. And g2 was winning. And then we drew. Yeah, I was just winning and I drew the game. So yeah, this was the game I played yesterday. Unfortunately, I drew, but we still won the match, which is good. Thank you for watching. Tell me if you like this new format where I engine check the game at the end of the video. So, I mean, basically, I didn't know if I played well or not, but this was after 5 hours of analysis. So let me know if you prefer this to me knowing the engine evaluation in advance. Thank you for watching. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.